Hello, welcome back to the next video for CSC 280 Introduction to Cybersecurity. Today we will start talking about cryptography and applications of cryptography. What we will not do is go into the mathematics of it, and how to do cryptography from a strict computer science perspective. We'll leave for a completely separate course, CSC 381, which is applied cryptography. This week we'll just take a quick overview of what cryptography is and what it can do for us. Cryptography is a method by which we can protect data. That's all it is. It is a way that we protect our data by transforming it. We make data look like something else. Typically we make it look like garbage, basically, some random collection of bits and bytes that to the casual observer means absolutely nothing, and even under closer scrutiny should not make sense to anyone who's looking at it without having specific access that we'll talk about in a second. So important to realize is that cryptography protects data, and it does so by transforming that data from a clear textual representation or from an image or an audio file or any of those file formats into a format that looks like it is something completely different. With cryptography, we can have a number of specific protections. We can achieve confidentiality. We can make sure that whatever is written or contained in that original file or original image stays secret and is only accessible to those people who have the rights to access that information. We call that confidentiality, where information is only available to people who are authorized to have access to that information. The second protection we can get with the use of cryptography is data integrity. The data integrity is a little different than the I that we know from the CIA triad. That's what we talked about right in the beginning. In terms of cryptography, data integrity means data has not been changed, or if it has been changed, we can detect that it has been changed. And so where cryptography doesn't necessarily prevent changing the data, it does give you a mechanism by which you can detect that changes have taken place. And that will then allow you to make an informed decision as to whether or not you're going to trust the data. So data integrity is all about, has the data been changed since it was originally written? Authentication in the context of cryptography means that we know who wrote the message. If we can determine by looking at the message who wrote it, we have achieved message authentication, and that is of course a very useful thing to have in many different scenarios. And lastly, we have non-repudiation, which means that it's very closely related to authentication, but it means that whoever wrote the message cannot deny having written the message or sending the message. And so authentication and non-repudiation are two very closely related concepts, where one you could say is more an application of the other. The encryption process is fairly straightforward. We start with whatever data we want to protect. And again, that could be a text message, it could be a video, it could be an email or a picture, it doesn't matter. No matter what it is, if it's an input to our cryptographic process, we call it the plain text, or the clear text in some cases. That's what we want to protect, the data that we're looking to safeguard from an attacker. And then we do something with it. We transform that plain text into this pile of what could look like random data, which we call the ciphertext. And the process by which we do that is called encryption. So what encryption really is nothing more than a transformation of a plain text into a ciphertext, and typically according to some well-defined and repeatable process. Of course, we want to be able to undo it, which means that we must have some mechanism in place to reverse what we have done, and that's called decryption. That's the exact flip. It takes the ciphertext as the input of the process and it reproduces the clear text or the plain text. Both the encryption and the decryption process take an input in addition to either the plain text or the ciphertext, and that is a key. The key influences the behavior of the encryption process and the decryption process, and the whole idea is that if you don't have that key, you cannot unlock the message that was protected. In the process that we call symmetric encryption, we use the same key to lock as we do to unlock. It's a very common analogy. That's what you do every day, that you lock your house or start your car. You turn your car on or you open your door with the same key as you lock it. And that means that there has to be a shared secret. Both the sender and the recipient of the message must have access to that key. If they don't, well, at that point there's a discrepancy and we can't figure out what the message said. What was figured out quite a while ago was that a crypto system, so the thing that we just talked about, must be secure, even if everything about it is known, except of course the key. And that means that we have to assume that an attacker is going to have access to our plain ciphertext, and that our attacker knows exactly what steps we took to transform the plain text into the ciphertext. So what algorithm or what cipher we used. The only thing that we are going to assume that the attacker does not know is the key that we used. And so we have to assume that everything else is known. This changes a little bit when we talk about asymmetric encryption. Asymmetric encryption is a different way of doing encryption, although the standard process does not change. We still have our plain text, which gets encrypted to produce a ciphertext, and we still have the decryption process, which takes that ciphertext as an input and produces the plain text. The key difference between symmetric and asymmetric encryption is the keys. In an asymmetric scenario, the key used to encrypt is different than the key used to decrypt. They are linked together, they are mathematically connected, but they are not the same key, which means that I could conceivably give you a key that you can use to lock the box and send me a message, but I keep the key to unlock the box so that no one else can intercept it. And that's the idea of asymmetric encryption. We use different keys to lock as we do to unlock, and because of that I can freely distribute the key that says, oh, if you want to send me something, go ahead and lock it with this key. But the key to unlock it I'll keep to myself. The first one is called the public key. You can tell everyone about it. Actually, you're encouraged to tell everyone, so everyone can send you messages. The second one is called the private key. You keep that secret to yourself and you do not share it with anyone for any reason. And so the key difference is that in a symmetric encryption scenario, we're dealing with a shared secret, where in an asymmetric scenario, we don't have a shared secret. Instead, we have two keys that we can split up. That's it for this video. The basic principle of encryption and decryption. There will be two more videos in this short series. One of them talks about applications of cryptography and show you how we can use cryptography as a tool in our cyber defense toolkit. And this last video will talk about some of the disadvantages that we incur when we are dealing with cryptography.